Serious. What's the creepiest/scariest thing you've seen, but no one believes you? Story 1. It was over 10 years ago now when a friend and I visited Japan. It was our first time there, so we went with a tour company. However, after the tour ended, we stayed an extra night in a hotel in East Ikebukuro. During the tour leader tells us stories of haunted hotels and other urban myths, as you do over beers or when you're enjoying a late-night onsen. One of the things he'd tell us was to be wary if you find a room where the head of the bed was positioned next to the window. So if you look up while lying in bed, you look out the window. He tried to scare us by saying in those rooms, ghosts would come through the window at night and drag you out to your death. Back at the East Ikebukuro Hotel, we checked in the early evening, and the first thing we noticed was how small the room was. The second thing was they gave us a double bed instead of twin singles. The third, the bed head was right next to the window. We rationalized that the room was too small really to align the bed any other way, and the tour leader was full of crap. To be honest, we were more annoyed that we had to share a double bed. We decided to just let it go since it was just for one night, so we went out for dinner before turning in for the night. That night, I got woken up by a door slamming shut and I jolted up. There, sitting at the foot of the bed, is a woman in a blue kimono. She had long hair and from what I could make out, her kimono had butterflies on it. I freak out, dive and bury my head under my pillow. Looking back, that was a useless move if anything bad were to happen. I remember thinking, is this real? How can I check without looking? In my genius, I decided to shuffle my foot down the bed thinking, if I don't touch anything, it's just my imagination. I didn't think about what I'd do if I did touch something. Little by little, my foot moves down the bed when I notice that there is definitely a depression at the foot of the bed. Thing was there. I retreat my foot, start to sweat, and at this point just start repeatedly saying the Lord's Prayer till I must have fainted or fallen back asleep. I remember waking up at 6 the next morning and my friend was already dressed and packed. I asked him if he saw or heard anything last night, and all he says is, "I don't want to talk about it. Let's check out." Ooh, that's pretty creepy, but come on, reach over and wake your friend up. It's a double bed. You're right next to each other. I know I would be grabbing him and getting his butt up. Story 2 was working at a convenience store, late shift. Just about nobody comes in from about 10:45 until we close at midnight. The way the store is set up, from behind the counter, I'm about 6 feet from the door in front of me and to my left, and directly above it are 2 security monitors. It's a very small store. The monitors flip through a few different camera angles, in the back, just outside my front door, in the lot, in my shed, by the coolers, and then repeat the cycle again. I'm working by myself, just me and my phone. 11 hits, nobody comes in for a while, probably 20 minutes of silence. Some time passes and I glance at the security monitor. It's showing the angle of the lot, and it shows in such a way that you could see someone's back as they enter the front door. And it's pretty dark out, so the best way to see if a customer's coming is to watch the cameras. It's at a slight delay, so I would see something happen on the monitors a second or two after it actually happened. When the angle from the lot comes back, I see a man from behind enter the front door. Black guy, not too tall, leather jacket. He's got a grocery bag in his right hand. I glance down at the front door, which is just below the monitors. Nobody's there. I thought it was a glitch, maybe an old tape replaying. I watched through another cycle of the camera angles, which lasts about 45 seconds or so, just to see if it would happen again. Halfway through the cycle, the door swings open and into the store steps a young black guy, not too tall, wearing a leather jacket. He's holding a grocery bag in his right hand. The icing on the cake was that he didn't buy anything. He just looked around for a minute and left. Mind's playing tricks on me, I guess, but I was spooked out of my mind. Didn't work any more nights after that. Wow, now I feel like I freaked out dozens of convenience store clerks as I paced to the door and back to the car, arguing with myself whether the 500 calories and a home run pie is worth it or not for my late night cheat meal. I mean, not to be down on this, but with the camera cycles and delay, my mind immediately just went to that the guy was at the door, then suddenly realized he left something in his car or had to throw something away in the garbage outside, then eventually got back to the door. Story 3. It's not that people don't believe me, it's more that I hardly believe it myself. It was late, probably between 1 and 3 a.m., and I was sitting at an intersection waiting for the light to go green. Across from me was a dark road with trees on either side and thick woods off to the left and houses off to the right. So I'm sitting there listening to music when I see something move at the edge of the woods to the left. Now, this is rural New Jersey, so things moving in the woods are either bears or deer, which aren't scary, but deers will F your car up if you run out in front of you. I turned my high beams on to see what it was, but they didn't reach the woods. Then I saw more movement before the light turned green. I made my left turn and drove off, but I couldn't see what it was. The next day, I drive the same route on my way to work, and when I get to that intersection, there's cops and ambulance over at the edge of the woods where I saw the movement the night before. I asked a coworker what happened, and he said they had found dismembered body parts there earlier that morning. Story 4. Was walking through the Rockies and managed to tear the muscle on the side of my foot, so I was hobbling back. I was on my own like a moron. In the space of hobbling back to Jasper, I saw a white bear. Think they are called spirit bears? Just watching me. Literally thought, F's sake, I'm gonna die here mauled by a bear and no one knows where I am. But it just sat there and pawed the dirt in the direction of the town. I limped on, keeping an eye on it, and it just watched me. Then, I swear to God, no more than 5 minutes later, a effing wolf appears limping exactly on the same foot I'm limping on, eyes me up, and continues on its journey. I think I was even too pathetic to bother with the moral of that story. I was petrified, though, either way. Story 5. My friend's grandma's house is right up against a cemetery. He always told me it was haunted and would see crazy stuff there, but I never believed him. One night we were over her house, and I swear I saw something the size of a toddler run from the living room through the dining room and into the kitchen. When I looked at my friend, he just went, "Did you see that kid run through the effing house?" It looked more like a fast-running shadow than an actual person. There was no one there. There were no kids around. It was his grandma's house, and we were the only ones over. It was late at night, and no doors opened or closed. When we told his grandma, she was just like, "Oh, don't worry about it. It happens all the time." After that, I started believing in ghosts. My friend also said when he used to sleep there, he used to push the spare room's TV away from him so it faced away from him because he would wake up at night and see people in the reflection staring back at him, watching him sleep. Scared the crap out of him. I don't know, you hear enough stories in an old house with some wiring and whatnot, some of that good infrasound, and I could see the possibility of seeing things. Or maybe Grandma was a low-key Scooby-Doo villain who just enjoyed messing with darned kids. Please like and subscribe if you've made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day. Story 6. My one weird thing was this. Some friends and I were hanging out one summer's eve. We were around 15. It was night clear, and we were all lying on my friend's trampoline in her backyard. We were just all chatting and looking at the stars. Suddenly, we're all like, "What the F? Did you just see that?" We all swore we saw a formation of stars trading places with each other. They sort of left a tail like a shooting star before resettling in their new positions. They all moved at the exact same time. It was strange. The three of us seemed to see the same thing. Story 7. It was the night before my stepmom died, lost her battle to cancer. I was 22, was spending the night in bed with my 9-year-old half-brother, cuddling him and telling him his mom was going to be okay. It wasn't going to hurt anymore. It was about 3 a.m. at the time, and after a while, he immediately sits upright in bed, smiles, says, "I promise to be a good boy, Mommy. I love you." Now, my stepmom had been bedridden for the last month, so she's not moving anywhere. But I swear on my life, and my little brother agrees with me, for a split second I saw her standing in the doorway wearing her big giant fur coat, just smiling at us and looking relieved. Brother went to sleep about 2 minutes later. I left to go into my dad and stepmom's room to check on her to see my dad awake and telling me she died about half an hour ago. I genuinely believe she stopped by on her way to the other side to check in on her 2 kids and make sure we'd be okay without her before she left. Sorry. Skeptical Mainly Facts guys on break for this comment. I don't care if I believe in ghosts or not. That's a really touching story, and I'm glad she stopped by for that final goodbye. Story 8. When I was a teenager, I used to keep the remote to my stereo on the lip of my bed frame. One night around midnight, I woke up to see my stereo playing static at me. Only it was getting louder. I could see the volume number moving higher and higher. So it's pitch black, and this static is getting louder and louder, and the remote wasn't in its usual place for some reason. I had no choice but to jump out of bed to turn it off. I turned on the light and, freaking out, found it. Under my bed, like deep under my bed at that middle point that's super hard to reach. Did not like it. Story 9. When I was 16, I skipped school to stay home and play video games. I set up my PlayStation and made some Hot Pockets, and right when I get good and comfortable, I hear footsteps walking to my room. I glanced outside and saw my parents weren't home yet, but was still afraid I was going to get caught. Seeing no place to hide, I froze. Suddenly, the door was flung open, and I heard a blood-curdling scream echo through the house. I must have sat there petrified in that room for half an hour before going outside and waiting for my parents to come home. I tried to explain to my friends later what happened, but they thought I was just pulling some BS from the internet. This'll teach that little crap not to eat my Hot Pockets. Your mom, probably. Story 10. I was a missionary in South Africa. One of the creepiest things that happened to me was on New Year's Eve. During that night, I woke up feeling really thirsty. I walked towards the refrigerator in the kitchen, and as I was drinking water, I turned around, and the front door was wide open. I could see the stars in the black sky and hear the faint sound of crickets in the distance. Not thinking anything of it, I closed it and went back to bed. In the morning, my missionary companion woke up first and noticed the door was wide open. It was then that we realized we had been robbed throughout the night, and I still remember my heart dropping as I realized the perpetrators were most likely in the dark house while I was in the kitchen in the middle of the night. Still gives me goosebumps thinking about it. Okay, this one is legit a huge fear of mine, and I'm so glad none of you were hurt. That is the kind of incident that I just don't know if I could ever fully get over. Story 11. I was maybe 4 or 5. We lived in a somewhat questionable neighborhood at the time, and looking out the window one night, I swear I saw a neighbor from an apartment nearby with her son. He was on one of those plastic trikes. I believe she ran inside to grab a jacket. In the 3 minutes she was gone, a vehicle pulled up and snatched the kid and took off. His mom came back and was looking for him. I tried to tell the adults in my apartment, but no one believed me or the other kids with us. Still, the scariest thing that haunts me to this day. Holy F, this is honestly the most terrible one I've read. Story 12. I don't know what it was because I don't remember it because I was a baby/toddler, but my mom certainly does and mentions it occasionally. I was her first kid, and when I was born, my parents lived in a little old house in Scotland. Mom says that really quite often, both I and the dog would stop whatever we were doing at the same time and both look towards the stairs as if we were watching something either descend or ascend them. This is corroborated by my dad and a few of their friends who saw it happening. It's basically their friend group's weird, inexplicable story. I just happen to be an unwitting part of it. Unfortunately, I have no memory of this at all, and the dog in question died 30 years ago, so they'll never get their answer. Yeah, if the dog was still alive, someone could have asked him what was going on. Story 13. Myself, wife, and kids were driving near some cliffs where we live. We stopped to take in the view and some photos. I lined the kids up with the cliff drop and ocean behind them and took some pics. As they took a step back for me to get a better picture, they fell off the edge of the cliff. I woke up sweating and petrified. The nightmare felt so real, one of those that really sticks with you. I went for a pee and checked in on all the kids, all fast asleep in bed, apart from my youngest 5-year-old daughter. She was on the floor. She had fallen out of bed, but somehow was still sleeping. Next to her, on the floor, knocked over, I assume when she fell, was a bedside lamp. The bulb from the lamp had burnt and was singeing into the carpet, I think ready to burst into flames. Nice of your subconscious to wake you up before the house went up in flames, though. This is one of those things that the skeptic in me chalks up to coincidence, but that is a pretty wild coincidence, don't you think? Maybe your brain kind of rewrote her memories of the dream, but I don't know. Story 14. When I was 10, I talked to someone all the time through the 6-inch tall slit window to our basement. He would always tell me not to go in the basement when I asked to see him because he wouldn't be there anyway. Talked to him for 1.5 years. Told me not to tell my mom because he didn't want to scare her. A few years later, I was telling my mom about the guy in the basement. I quit talking to him by then, and she told me she could believe me because when I was a baby, she would always see my door to my room open like someone was peeking in to see if I was all right and then shutting it quietly. Told me that she figured it was the guy who owned the house before us because that used to be his grandkids' room. It was one of those small towns where our grandparents knew each other. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.